Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on InRangeTV. We're doing another mud test today, and it's of a rifle that you might not expect us to do a mud test on. You know, of all things, why this? This is a Winchester model of 1895 lever action rifle, notable for having a box magazine, so it's compatible with pointed Spitzer cartridges. And the reason that we're looking at this today is because the Russian army in World War I actually took 300,000 of these into the literal trenches of World War I. Now, a lot of people have commented and wondered over why didn't military forces ever use lever action rifles? And one of the explanations people come up with is, well, when you open the action up, the whole thing is just wide open for debris, and it probably wouldn't work well in the muddy trenches of World War I. Well, let's find out. Now, this specifically is not a Russian contract rifle. Those can actually be distinguished by a set of stripper clip guides back here. They were chambered for 7.62 by 54 rimmed. This is a run-of-the-mill American. It's actually been sporterized. It's chambered in 30-40 Krag, or 30 Army, or 30 US. The finish is all gone, and this particular rifle was loaned to us for this specific purpose by one of our very cool followers. Thank you. So, I'm going to put a couple of rounds through it just to show that it does in fact work first. Then we'll give it the mud treatment and see what happens. All right, so that's pretty good. Now, if this were an actual Russian rifle, I would of course be using stripper clips. This is an American one, so you kind of push them in and then fold them down. You can see here how much stuff is open. Now, that's only when the action's open. And what we're going to do is have the action closed, like it would be when you're actually carrying it around. It is interesting to point out, that's 5 rounds, magazine is full. So it is interesting to point out that there is actually a grip safety on this rifle. If you don't lever this down, the lever itself stays locked closed. So that's a safety feature on the gun. Now, there is no manual safety other than the half cock. So let's see. The obvious problem we're going to run into is that the hammer is going to hit here. Or the mud is going to get in here, the hammer will hit the mud instead of the firing pin, and it will fail to fire. However, if that happens, we'll just ameliorate with a stick and carry on. So, get it on the side. That's pretty gooped up. Get the other side. Watery mud on there.
That's pretty good.
Oh, good? That look about right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? We actually did not get any. Because we did the sides, we didn't get anything back in the hammer channel. So, here we go. And I'm empty. So an interesting way to look at this. You know, this thing is wide open here, and there's all sorts of horrible places for mud to get into, but that's only while the gun's actually open. When it's closed up like this, you know, that's not too bad. In fact, if you were carrying this in the field, because there is no manual safety on it, what you would be doing is you would carry it. You'd load 5 in the magazine, and then you'd push the top one down and actually close the bolt over it and drop the hammer. That way, when you're ready to fire, what you do is cycle the action, and you're ready to go. In that configuration, the hammer pretty well protects itself here, or the hammer protects the firing pin. I think overall, you've got a pretty reliable gun in the trenches, which, you know, that fits with the actual reason why armies didn't use lever action rifles. There were 2 reasons that they actually didn't in history. The first is that for a long time, the lever action rifles available were basically in pistol caliber cartridges. Until you got to like the Winchester 1886, you had fairly weak lever action designs that were only capable of cartridges like 4440 and earlier even wimpier rimfire cartridges like the 44 Henry. Military forces didn't want light-powered cartridges like those. They wanted heavy military rifle cartridges, which wasn't an option in early lever action rifles. By the time it became an option, like this rifle, first off, for a long time you still had, well, for like 10 years, you still were limited to 2 magazines, which might be fine for something like a flat-nosed 4570, but the militaries wanted pointed bullets. And a 2 magazine just isn't really effectively compatible. There were a few military rifles, like the Lebel, that did have 2 magazines, but they were never optimal. By the time you got to a rifle like this, which is both capable of using a full-power rifle cartridge and has a box magazine, so that you don't have the issue of bullet tips hitting primers, at this point, everyone's got bolt actions. They're easier to work prone, they're generally considered stronger, and they were generally favored by military forces. So really, the reason that military forces didn't use rifles like this is that this came along too late, and it just didn't have the opportunity to be given a fair shake. The Russians, of course, did. Like I said, 300,000 of these in 7.62 by 54 rimmed were used in the First World War, where, not surprisingly after seeing this, they were actually very well liked. They were prized rifles, and they saw a lot of service. If you look at pictures of them in the field, you'll often see them looking kind of like this guy with all the finish worn off, because if one guy had one and got shot, became a casualty, someone else was going to pick up that rifle and use it. Because I don't know about you, but I'd much rather have one of these than a Mosin-Nagant. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this sort of content, please consider hooking up with us on Patreon and contributing financially to help support us. Patreon is what allows us to come out here and do this sort of work and bring you cool content. If you can't afford to do that, we certainly understand. We'd ask instead that you just share the video, talk about it, and tune in next week for more cool stuff.